Thank you for coming. I'm very happy to see so many of you. You probably all know how good Seán Heely and his Celtic band. Just for those who are new to our space, the restrooms are straight back. There will be an intermission for about 10 minutes. The merch will be open at that time, but we'd rather, if everybody goes at the same time, then we end up having an intermission that lasts forever. It will be 10 minutes, and then it will be open again at the end of the concert. And at the end of the concert, we'll also open the reception. You are more than we planned for our reception. But there will be something for everybody. Those are the main things for now, so we're very happy to welcome again. They came last year, and I hope them to stay after they came. Welcome.
back here and come back to the Living Arts Concert Series. We have had a really busy month, as you can probably imagine. March ends up being a very busy month for a Celtic musician. If you see one of us during this month, go ahead and just give him a hug. We're doing okay. We're just every day gigging somewhere fun and having a great time sharing some of this music. So we started there with a set of tunes that goes back to my record, actually my first record with the first gig there, which we start out kind of atmospheric and welcoming you. It is a tune that I wrote when I was in the Isle of Skye and was surrounded by good friends, and we were always gathering in circles, and for somehow someone always had a bottle of whiskey nearby, and there would always be a wee dram. So I ended up calling that the Dram Circle. And then a tune that was written on St. Patrick's Day of 2020. If you think back, I was not in an Irish pub, and I was not playing a gig. I was sitting at my friend's kitchen table writing a tune that I ended up calling Quarantine. And then a great reel by Liz Carroll, who is a famous Irish fiddler from Chicago there. So we're going to play one of the famous songs now that you might have heard from the Clancy Brothers. This is all about Irish moonshine, or poteen. And there's a lot of great songs in this repertoire, as there was a lot of poteen being made in Ireland. And then, of course, when they came to America, nothing changed, really. They kept making the moonshine in the hills and everything. So this is a tune called The Rare Old Mountain Dew.
Let grasses grow and waters flow in a free and easy way. But give me enough of the minor stuff that's made here Galway Bay. A policeman haul from Donegal, Sligo and Leitrim too. We'll give them a sip and take a sip of the rare old Mountain Dew. At the top of the hill there's a neat little still where the smoke curls up to the sky. From the smoke and the smell you can clearly tell there's poaching brewing nearby. It fills the air with an odor rare that betwixt both me and you. When round you stroll through the bucket or a hole of the rare old Mountain Dew. Now learned men who use a pen have sung your praises high. That sweet poteen from Ireland breed distilled from wheat and rye. Throw away your pills, it'll cure all ills, a hagen or a Christian or two. Take off your coat and grease your throat with a rare old Mountain Dew.
We're going to continue on with a set of cello tunes now. I was really lucky to be joined by Seán and Kevin in an audition that I had last year, and so we're going to play that set of tunes now. We're going to start off with a traditional Scottish air. This one comes from one of the older Scottish collections. It's called "This Bloom on My Soul." Then we'll go into an original tune that I wrote last year. It's called "Where the Silence Sings," and then to an Irish reel called "Castle Kelly."
remember if she mentioned this, but she did that audition for the Strathmore Artist in Residence program, and she got in, so she's currently a Strathmore Artist in Residence. And her concert is on April 29th. So you can go see her at the mansion. I'll be playing with her, Kevin too, so it's going to be fun. Actually, all three of us are previous Strathmore Artists in Residence, so it's going to be fun for her to join family. So we sang that song in English, the rare old Mountain Dew, talking about the Irish poitín. And like I said, there's a lot of examples of this song. And when I first heard the next song we're going to sing, I thought it was about cows and sheep. But it turns out he was actually talking about these things to hide the fact that he was talking about whiskey. How does this work, you ask? Well, the tune is called Bull in the Haircut in the Irish language, which means the one-horned cow. Now, if any of you have ever seen one of those copper pot stills, it's like this kind of tubular structure, and it has this little connection to the distillery building sometimes if it's outside, so it's that, you know, that little thing. So that's the horn, and the rest of it is, you know, the cow or whatever. So as you start researching the lyrics of this, I found out that he's actually talking about whiskey and not just sheep and cows, which is pretty hilarious. Maybe it was an illegal operation, I don't know. But he kind of forgets. I think he dipped in and had some of the whiskey because at some point the verses sort of lose their meaning, and he just starts saying, "Oh, isn't she lovely? Isn't she neat?" For the last three verses, it's just the same thing on half of it. So it's a beautiful tune. Though what attracted me first was the melody. So just keep that in mind. It's called "Bull in the Haircut." The one-horned cow comes from County Kerry. and Chan the Flute Ayakuk and all that stuff, but the swaying really helped there. So good job, good job.
All right, folks, here's another one that you can join in, this time in the very exotic language known as English. Yeah, the refrain of this particular song, I'll teach it to you real quick in case you don't know it. It goes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hunt the hare and turn her down the rocky road, all the way to Dublin, what the load How many of you have heard that one before? Okay, good, we got some plants in the audience. Perfect. Excellent. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, tree, the regional pronunciation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hunt the hare, little bunny rabbit, right? And turn her down the rocky road, all the way to Dublin, what the load Everyone got it? Now let's try it together real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hunt the hare and turn her down the rocky road, all the way to Dublin, what the load And then at the end of the piece, listen for when we change the meter, go into a reel, and if you feel like we're kind of lagging in the tempo, you can clap and keep us on beat. When the merry month of June, coming home I started, left the girls of doom, nearly broken hearted, saluted father dear, kissed me darling mother, drank a pint of beer, and youthful tears to smother that up to reap the corn, knew where I was born, cut to stout my horns, and vanished, and goblets, fought to pair of roads, rattling o'er the lawns, lightning all the dogs, the rocky road to Dublin, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, cut the hare and turned her down the rocky road, all the way to Dublin, so we started by daylight next morning bright, and early took a drop of the pure to keep people from singing. That's the Paddy's cure by Mary's on for drinking. And the lassie smiled at me curious style, asked me was I her asked me was I hired or wages I required till I was almost tired. The rocky road to Dublin, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, went to the hare and turned her down the rocky road, all the way to Dublin, what the load Dublin next survived, I thought it was a pity to be so soon deprived of you of that fine city. Then I took a stroll, all among the quality on the little stall, in the neat locality. When I looked behind, something crossed me like no bundle could I find a body stick. Oh, let it fire and after the road is at the conic road. You wasn't much to know on the rocky road to Dublin, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hunt the hare and turned her down the rocky road, all the way to Dublin. Landed on the quay just as the ship was sailing. The captain at me roared, said no room Paddy. When I jumped aboard, it hadn't found for Paddy. There among the dips, playing some martinis, dance some martinis, the water of me all. And when the holly hit, wished himself were dead. That bar to sail on the rocky road to Dublin, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hunt the hare and turned her down the rocky road, all the way to Dublin, what the road of Liverpool. When we say freedom, it called me self a fool. I could no longer stand to be blood, be dead and boiled. Her eye was losing, poor old Terence Isle. They began losing her ring. So says I should make the alibi. Galway boys were mine, and saw I was a howling. Fell down hooray, jumped into the affray, and quickly cleared the way for the rocky road to Dublin, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hunt the hare and turned her down the rocky road, all the way to Dublin, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hunt the hare and turned her down the rocky road, all the way to Dublin, 1,
It's Kevin Heely over here giving us the Rocky Road to LA.
Lovely audience assistance,
Man, those, I don't know what it was, but they just decided at some point in the Irish repertoire, they're just going to write all these songs where you have to fill out every single note in the tune with a word. It's just like, whew, that's a lot of words. Speaking of that, we're going to go into the Scottish version of that, which is a wonderful type of Gaelic music called Posh the Biel, and that means tunes of the mouth, so mouth music tunes, and they were originally done with a dancer, and it's like really awesome when the rhythm of the language links up with the rhythm of the steps that Augie Kovac is doing for you over here. Give her a big hand. We have a few of these Posh groups of tunes, medleys, I guess you could say, that we've been doing. And this is a newer one that I put together after listening to all these old records and sort of deciding which ones I like the best and trying my best to make them all stick together, which was a project in itself. But it ended up kind of being like, I always try to find some sort of a story with these medleys that I'm putting together. So I've decided that this one kind of just describes things that are going on in the village. So the first one is about a woman who is dancing, and she's the Cailleach, actually. So this one is a very old one. It has many hundreds of years on it. It's called Heely, which means the old woman would set, the old woman would reel. This has nothing to do with this Augie over here, okay? And then it goes into one where they're kind of wondering where the sailors are. Where are these sailors? Where have they gone? And they're saying, oh, they've gone off to dance with the girls in Lerwick, which might be referring to Shetland. I'm not sure. But and then it goes into one where Finley is raking manure. They actually have a verbal noun for this. Hafion. So, you just say that, and that covers that whole sentence. And so this is just things that are happening in the village, and I hope you enjoy this wee set of Posh the Biel from the Highlands of Scotland. We do these sets sometimes, and we go to festivals all across the country. One of my favorite, we got to the festival in Longs Peak in Estes Park, Colorado, and we were like, oh my God, we're gonna die. Over 7,000 feet elevation. Yeah, we did all right though. We did all right. All right, this next set takes us all over the world again to the Celtic nation of Brittany first, and then on to the Balkans with a tune written again by Liz Carroll from Chicago that explores some of the 7/8 rhythms of the Balkans. And after all that craziness, we'll cleanse the palate with an Irish jig called Scatter the Mud. So we're gonna do one more for you and then take an intermission. We've been having a great time playing this next set of tunes at various festivals across the country, and these are both original tunes coming up here. The first one, how many of you have been to Scotland so I can get a picture of that? Okay, wow, that's a lot. Now, how many of you have been to the Isle of Lewis in Scotland? Okay, so that's usually the answer. It's a little harder to get out there, but let me tell you, it's so worth it. It's an otherworldly place and just absolutely beautiful. There's this famous standing stones site on Lewis called Callanish, and there's actually several standing stone sites that you can see from the main one. It's a really powerful place, and I happened to be there 2 years ago and saw this amazing sunset. You know, one of those classic Scottish or Irish kind of days where it's just overcast and then all of a sudden the clouds part and the rainbow comes out, you know, this kind of thing. And so I wrote this tune after it called The Sunset on Callanish, and then had some lovely friends who supported a record of mine, and I wrote a tune for them, and they're avid skiers, so I imagined skiing when I wrote the tune, like, it has a lot of ups and downs and crazy rhythms and fun things like that. And it's called Bluebird Days. So this is for Donna and Reed. And so Sunset on Callanish and Bluebird Days, which is going on an upcoming record. It's not out yet, but it started. So here we go.
off having to pick up my stuff. Now I understand. But I'm not like I can get out and all of this. So when I told my mom, how much yeah, that's I didn't really see anything because they always have to put like extras to it like they have. So that's like one of the reasons I'd rather not go out. I'd rather not go out.
around for the second half. We're going to go way back into the past with this first piece. This goes back to the 18th century, and a lot of Irish music back at that time was composed on instruments such as the harp, and has an almost Baroque classical sound to it. So we've got an arrangement of a beautiful piece by the harpist Turlough O'Carolan, and it's called Loftus Jones. Thank you so much. It's beautiful music. Don't get to hear it at the pubs as much, but occasionally you do. So we're going to do a set from County Kerry now instead of slides. So slides very, very fast jigs. That's really the difference. They have their own little dance that goes with it. How many of you have been to the County Kerry in Ireland? It's a beautiful place, isn't it? Lots of great mountains, and they play a lot of polkas and slides, and in comparison to the other parts of the country, they really love those kind of tunes. So here we go with a couple of slides.
this particular occasion, Napoleon, who features in a lot of songs from this period, Napoleon Bonaparte had placed his brother Joseph Bonaparte on the throne of Spain, which wasn't a very popular decision with the local Iberians, the Spanish and Portuguese, and so they allied with the British to cast off the French imperial presence in the peninsula, and hence the Peninsular War, as it was called, part of the Napoleonic Wars. There will be a quiz later, so make sure you take notes, get all this down. But this is the backdrop of a number of Irish songs, as well as the career of Admiral Horatio Nelson. This is where he got his start. But anyway, there's a number of great Irish songs that come from this period. And in particular, in this song, the sergeant comes and asks Mrs. McGraw if she wants to send her son off to the war. And he says, oh, we'll give him a fine coat and a fine hat, and he'll get to go see the world. And she says, okay. So Ted McGraw goes off to the war, and then he comes back, and he's missing his legs. And yeah, it's very, very tragic. But as with so many great Irish songs, there's sort of a uniquely comedic take on this tragedy. And so young Ted and his mother have this very funny discussion, and she says, well, where are your two legs? Were you drunk or were you blind when you left your two fine legs behind? And he says, no, it was a cannonball. And she says, well, why didn't you run from the cannonball? So anyway, that's the background of the song Mrs. McGraw that comes to us from the early 19th century. And you'll catch on to the two-raya, fa-da-diddle-das after one or two times, so feel free to join in on those. So here we go, Mrs. McGraw. Mrs. McGraw, the sergeant said, would you like to take us home or give you some Ted? With the new fur coat and the tom-cocked hat now, Mrs. McGraw, wouldn't you like that with the two-raya? Ba-da-da, two-raya, raya, with the two-raya. Ba-da-da, two-raya, raya. Then Mrs. McGraw lived on the seashore for 6 or 7 long years or more. When she saw a tall ship coming into the bay, that's my son Ted, she cleared away with the two-raya, ba-da-da, two-raya, raya, raya, with the two-raya, ba-da-da, two-raya, raya, raya. Yep, there you go. Then Captain dear, where have you been? And have you been sailing on the Mediterranean? And have you any tidings of my son Ted? Is the poor boy living or is he dead? With the two-raya, two-raya, raya, raya, the two-raya, ba-da-da, two-raya, raya, raya. Then up comes Ted with how many legs, and in their steadiness 2 wooden pegs. Well, she kissed him a dozen times, or 2, crying, holy Moses, is it you with the two-raya, ba-da-da, two-raya, raya, raya, with the two-raya, ba-da-da, two-raya, raya, raya. Were you drunk? Were you blind when you left your 2 fine legs behind? Or was it the working on the sea? Took your 2 fine legs from the keys away with the two-raya, ba-da-da, two-raya, raya, raya, with the two-raya, ba-da-da, two-raya, raya, raya. No, I wasn't drunk and I wasn't blind when I left my 2 fine legs behind. But a big cannonball on the 5th of May took me 2 fine legs from the keys away with the two-raya, ba-da-da, two-raya, raya, raya, with the two-raya, ba-da-da, two-raya, raya, raya. Then Teddy boy, the widow cried, those 2 fine legs were your mother's pride. Those stumps of tree won't do at all. Why didn't you run from the cannonball with the two-raya, ba-da-da, two-raya, raya, raya, two-raya, ba-da-da, two-raya, raya, raya. And if I had you back again, I'd never let you go to fight the king of Spain. And my brothers out through the time, they swept the legs of a child of mine with the two-raya, ba-da-da, two-raya, raya, raya, the two-raya, ba-da-da, two-raya, raya, raya. All foreign lords I do proclaim, the dream Don John, the king of Spain. And by heavens I live in a room with his 2 wooden legs. And we hope that his mother forgave him for not running away from the cannonball.
If you've ever tried to argue with an Irish man, you know it's hopeless. So how many of you have been anywhere in the world and you're just traveling along and you just happen to see an Irish pub? You know, they're very frequent all over the world. Yeah. So I've played in sessions. I take my fiddle everywhere I go, of course, and I've found sessions as far afield as Rome, gone in there and not really speaking Italian, and being able to play the same tunes, and it's pretty cool. But the craziest place that I found an Irish pub was in Peru, in Lima, south of Lima. We took a bus trip and went to this desert oasis. Literally huge sand dunes surrounding this, oasis with just a few buildings and little shops for tourists and things. And the first thing I see when I get out of the bus is this stone building with a little leprechaun with heart-shaped eyes on the side. So when I heard this song that was popularized by the High Kings called the Irish Pub Song, and the first verse says, well, you could be walking through a city street, maybe you're in Peru. I was like, oh my gosh, did they go to the same place? Probably did. And you hear a distant calling and you know it's meant for you. You gotta drop what you're doing and join the merry mob, because just before you know where you are, you're in an Irish pub. So we're going to do this song here that just kind of makes light of the fact that the Irish are expert marketers and experts at getting the Guinness and the music and the Irish pubs all over the world. Here we go, the Irish pub song. Well, you're walking through a city street, you could be in Peru, and you hear a distant calling, and you know it's meant for you. Then you drop what you were doing, and you join the merry mob, and before you know just where you are, you're in an Irish pub. They got one in Honolulu, they got one in Moscow too, they got 4 of them in Sydney and a couple in Kathmandu. So whether you sing or pull a punch, you'll always have a job, 'cause wherever you go around the world, you'll find an Irish pub. Now the design is very simple, it usually works the same. You'll have Fraser Hepburn scoring in the Ireland-England game, and you know you're in an Irish pub with the manager in the door, for a couple of boys with power and Celtic and Christy Moore. They've got one in Honolulu, they've got one in Moscow too, they got 4 of them in Sydney and another in Kathmandu. So whether you sing or pull a punch, you'll always have a job, 'cause wherever you go around the world, you'll find an Irish pub. Now the owner is Norwegian, and the manager comes from Cork, and the lad that's holding up the bar says only Egypt's work. He was born and bred in Bolton, but his mammy's from Kildare, and he's going to make his fortune soon and move to County Clare. They got one in Honolulu, they got one in Moscow too, they got 4 of them in Sydney and another in Kathmandu. So whether you sing or pull a punch, you'll always have a job, 'cause wherever you go around the world, you'll find an Irish pub. Now it's time for me to go, boys. I have to catch me train, so I'll leave you sitting at the bar to face the wind and rain. For I'll have the pint you owe me if I'm not gone on the dry, when we meet next week in Frankfurt in the fields of Mountain Rye. They got one in Honolulu, they got one in Moscow too, they got 4 of them in Sydney and another in Kathmandu. So whether you sing or pull a punch, you'll always have a job, 'cause wherever you go around the world, you'll find an Irish pub. They got one in Honolulu, they got one in Moscow too, they got 4 of them in Sydney and another in Kathmandu. So whether you sing or pull a punch, you'll always have a job, 'cause wherever you go around the world, you'll find an Irish pub. tune in the winter of, I think, last year. The years are going by so fast, I'm like, what? But it's in the depths of winter, I kind of looked to the mythology of the Celtic world and was doing some research and learning a lot of things. How many of you know about the Green Man in Celtic mythology? Yeah, you've seen him probably in drawings. You know, he's got his nature spirit. He's got the leaves on his face. You know, they would put this figure in on the side of cathedrals and in the stonemasons and everything. I went to Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland, and I saw the Green Man outside, you know, in effigies all over the place. And that was their way of thanking the forest for the use of materials to build the church. Pretty interesting. So anyways, this figure is sort of related to the Green Man. He's called the Holly King. And the Holly King and the Oak King are the two that battle over these light and dark sides of the year in the mythology. And the Holly King, you know, presides over the winter and the cold, and the Oak King battles him every year to bring in summer and the warmer weather and the return of the light. Which, like the last time we had a gig last week on March 11th, and I said, I think the Oak King has finally won. I think we're,
It would have been 85 degrees that day.
Yes. And then I woke up the next morning, went to the other gig that Kevin and I were going to, and it was blizzarding, so I guess I angered the Holly King with that remark. So we'll see what happens now. I mean, geez, I'd like the Oak King to finally win this battle so we can have some sunshine and warmth. So here's some two original tunes, the Holly King and the Oak King.